In fact, I heard a funny joke not too long ago about a time when the Pope was going to expel all of the Jewish folk out of Rome. This was centuries and centuries ago, and of course he did that, and it was a terrible thing, but the joke is funny, so bear with me here. And so they decided they were going to have a little bit of a competition because, of course, the Jewish community was up in arms about it. They did not want to be booted out, and so they gathered together, and the Pope was going to face off with one of the strongest Jewish leaders there. His name was Moshe, and so they have this head-to-head competition, and they decided to make it more interesting, and no one would use any words, just hand gestures. And so they gather on the fateful day, and the Pope comes out, and he simply does this. He holds up 3 fingers. And then Moshe responds, and he holds up 1. And then the Pope waves his hand around like this. And then Moshe points to the ground. And then the Pope reaches out and grabs bread and wine. And then Moshe pulls out an apple. Now, of course, the Pope simply hangs his head in shame. And he says, this man is way too powerful for me. And the cardinals gather around and said, what do you mean? How did you lose? I don't understand. He says, well, this is what happened. I held up 3 as a sign of the Trinity. But Moshe reminded me that God is one. I waved my hand to suggest that God is everywhere. But Moshe pointed to the ground and said, no, he is right here with us. And I took out the sacred elements of Holy Communion, bread and wine, and the need for forgiveness. But Moshe took out the forbidden fruit, the apple from Genesis 1, and reminded me that we are all sinners. And I knew I was beaten. And of course, Moshe's gathering with all of his Jewish friends, and they want to know, how did you win? What happened? How did it go? And he said, well, listen, the Pope came out and he said we had 3 days to vacate. I said we weren't even leaving in 1. He said, the whole town was against you. And I said, we're staying right here. And then, of course, he took out his lunch, so I took out mine. I mean...